Hello, welcome to the Craig's Motel. My name's Conan. Okay, it's here. The update to the firmware 3.6. There's loads involved. What I wanted to do is make a quick video, although as you know with me, it probably won't be a quick video, on the MPC Pro pack, which is available when you download 3.6, but you do have to pay. Let's jump in. So before we get into it, I just want to point out I'm not affiliated or sponsored by Akai or InMusic. They do not send me free stuff. Consequently, my reviews will be honest and unbiased. Another thing I want to point out is, despite what some people might think when I do sometimes quite brutal reviews, I don't hate the MPC and I don't hate Akai. I've been using MPC since 1989. I've probably released over 1,000 tracks using the MPC. That's not somebody that hates the MPC. I absolutely love the MPC. I use it daily. I run a YouTube channel, which is predominantly about the MPC. So I just want to make that clear. It's just that my reviews, I like them to be honest. I like to point out the pros and the cons. Sometimes it might be a bit brutal, but they are honest and they are unbiased. And if you think that means I hate the MPC, you're absolutely free to your opinion. We don't have to agree. So I'm not going to go into a massive detailed breakdown of everything that's in the new update. What I'm going to concentrate on today is the Pro Pack. The reason why I want to concentrate on the Pro Pack is because it offers a lot of things that people have been asking for, but I think a lot of people are expecting to get it for free. Now, I'm not going to get into a debate about that. If you want to pay for it, if you don't want to pay for it, if you think it's bad, it's paid for, if you think that's entirely up to you. That is not what this video is about. What I'm going to do is I'm going to review the plugins or some of the plugins in the Pro Pack, which you are going to have to pay for, because I just want you guys to know the pros and the cons before you start spending your money. So just running through it quickly, as you can see here, you have to pay $99.99 USD. And it's supposed to be $199. Whether it will ever be that price, I don't know. So I'm just going to quickly run through it. So this is the Pro Pack that you get when you download 3.6. If you go into your plugins, you can basically download, you can trial these for 10 days, and I suggest you do that. And then you can decide whether you want to buy them or not. I'm not sure if you can buy them separately. It doesn't seem that you can. It looks like you have to buy the entire pack. Maybe in the future they'll sell them separately. I think it'd be a good idea if they do, because you know, you might not want some of these plugins. For instance, starting off here with Air Fabric Select, this is a kind of a lighter version as far as I'm aware of Fabric. So if you already own Fabric, you're probably not going to really want to pay again for Select. Air Visual EQ, I'm going to be reviewing that. That's one of the ones that a lot of people have been talking about or asking, requesting. Air Reverb Pro, I'm also going to go through that, and I'm going to go through Air Utility as well. Now, these Pro Pack features, the clip launching, the advanced CV playground, the advanced Q-links, the super warp algorithm, I'm not going to go through those today. I might go through those in another video, but what I really wanted to do today was just touch on these three plugins here, because these are plugins which I think people might want to buy separately, and I think people need to know the pros and cons of these plugins before they shell out $99 US or $100 US. So the first one I'm going to look at is the Visual EQ. Obviously, it's been requested quite a lot. The impression that I get is quite a few people are not overly happy by the fact that they're going to have to pay for it. I think people were expecting to get it for free. Like I said, I'm not going to get into that debate. What I'm going to do right now is I'm in Studio One and I've got FabFilter Pro Q3 open. I use this EQ on a daily basis, and I have done for absolutely years, and I trust the visual readout on it. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to go through 5 different test tones just so that you can see what they actually look like on a visual EQ, which I know is reliable. I've got it in linear phase, and I'm going to play you a selection of test tones. I'll keep the volume right down so it doesn't blast your ears out. But the first one I'm going to play is 100 Hertz. So as you can see, that's what 100 Hertz looks like. It's nice and clean. And at the top there, it's about 100. You could argue that it's a couple of hertz either way, but basically that's what 100 Hertz looks like on the FabFilter Pro Q3. So now we'll look at 250 Hertz. There we go. You can see it's a smaller peak and is pretty accurate. And I'm happy with that. Like I said, I use Pro EQ4 on a daily basis, and I have done for years. So the next one we're going to look at is 440 Hertz. Again, you can see that's accurate to within a couple of hertz, and it's nice and clean. Look around the surrounding areas, nice and clean. That's a test tone at 440. And now at 1 kilohertz, 1000 hertz. Again, nice and accurate, nice and clean. And then finally, 10 kilohertz, 10,000 hertz. Pure, clean goodness. So now jumping into the MPC, we'll have a look at Visual EQ. Nice, clean GUI. I like that. It looks nice. We'll play a drum beat through it. So you can see you get a nice visual readout. You've got 4 bands. You can change what each band does. Obviously, you have a low shelf, low pass, high pass, etc. But by default, your initial preset is high shelf, low shelf, and 2 peaks. Now, I will tell you straight away, it sounds pretty decent. It's a nice EQ. But the power EQ in the MPC was already good, and I would imagine that this is probably based on the same coding, same sounds, etc. I might be completely wrong, but we know for a fact that the MPC can provide us with a decent sounding EQ, and this does sound decent. And I mean, let's just play the beat through it. I'll boost the lows a little bit, I'll clean up the mud a little bit, I'll give it a bit of clarity and a little bit of air. So I'm going to leave that as it is, low shelf, peak, peak, high shelf. So I can change the Q here at the bottom. So basically you've got the frequency, the level that you want to push it to or attenuate or boost, and then underneath you've got the Q. So it's decent. It's a decent EQ, and we've got our visual. We've got everything that we've asked for. There's a bunch of presets in there. I couldn't tell you whether they're any good or not. They might be. They might put you in the ballpark. But personally, myself, I don't tend to use presets and EQs, but that doesn't mean that you shouldn't. Feel free to use presets. So we'll go back to the initial. And what I'm going to do now is, if I switch to bank B in here, I have the same test tones. And I'm going to show you this, and I'm going to be honest with you, and you probably already guessed this. If you've watched my video on the multi-bank filter, I basically proved that the visual EQ in there, or the visual reference in there, was not particularly accurate. And I think in the past I've also proved in compression videos that the numbers, the ratio, they don't match up. But I also said in those videos that it didn't really matter because it still sounds good. And let's be honest, I do think this EQ sounds good. But the visual reference, I'm afraid, is not accurate. And also, if the visual reference is telling me what I think it's telling me, then there's some serious issues with the coding. There's some aliasing in there, and there's some problems. Now, I can't be conclusive about this because I would want to run it through Plugin Doctor, and I don't have it as a VST3, so I can't do that at the moment. So I am literally basing my opinion on what I can hear in my ears and what I can see in the visual EQ. Now, That doesn't look very clean to me. Neither does that. Equally as bad. Pretty terrible. And this one is awful. I don't even know what that is. Down here. Now, these are professional test tones provided by the Cambridge College of Audio, etc. They're not just like some sine wave or whatever that I've just plucked from the air. They're professional test tones that I've been using and many other professionals have been using for many years. And they're the same ones that I ran through Pro Q3 Fab Filter on Studio One. And I trust that visually. Now, also, the thing I'll say as well is with the 10K test tone especially, I can hear some weird stuff going on. And it doesn't sound clean. So that worries me. This is at 0 now, this EQ. It shouldn't be boosting or attenuating anything at all, but I can hear a difference. Now I can bypass it. And I can hear a very, very slight. Now, just to be clear, these headphones are considered to be professional headphones, but they're not super expensive, but I do trust them. They're not my actual professional mixing and mastering headphones. For that I use Audeze MX4s and the LCD-X, which, you know, the MX4s are $3,000. I trust them, but I wanted to just use more kind of, they're not consumer level, but I would say that they're probably high-end consumer level, maybe lower-end professional level. But some people would consider these to be 100% professional headphones from Beyerdynamic. So they're decent headphones and I trust them. But with just these, I mean, I don't know what I would hear if I put my MX4s on, because the sound stage and the frequencies you can hear in those are unprecedented to any headphone I've ever tried before. But just even in these at 10K, when I bypass it, I can hear a slight difference, and that shouldn't be the case. Now, you could argue actually that EQs, hardware EQs, for instance, when you run something through a hardware EQ, it's going to taint it very, very slightly. There's going to be a difference, and that's what some people like. Some people like the character that is imprinted from a hardware EQ or a hardware compressor. So, you know, I used to have, I used to run Pultecs in a studio that I worked at in the mid-90s, and sometimes I wouldn't even boost or attenuate. I would just run through the Pultec because I liked the character that it imprinted on the sound. But I don't like the character this is imprinting. It's subjective, obviously, but that 10K I can hear aliasing. With the 1K, it's not so clear, but that's messy. There's stuff going on in there that there shouldn't be. This down here definitely shouldn't be there. So, you know, I'm not going to keep going through it and saying this is bad, this should be there and all that kind of stuff. The point of this is not to say the visual EQ is rubbish, it doesn't sound very good, because actually I think it does sound pretty decent. It's an EQ that I'm going to use in the MPC now for sure. The point of this is it's not an accurate reference for visual EQing. So when you play a drum beat through it, or a clap, or a bass line, or a singer, a vocalist, or whatever, the visuals that you're seeing, if you're judging your EQ moves on those visuals, then they're not going to be accurate. So in conclusion to that, what I would say is the visuals put you kind of in the ballpark, I guess, but they introduce some harmonics and some noise and some aliasing and some things that shouldn't be there. Therefore, it's not accurate. And I'm sorry, please dislike this video if you think that I'm an arsehole and I shouldn't be pointing these things out. If you want to bury your head in the sand, feel free. I'm just giving you an honest and unbiased opinion. It's not an accurate visual EQ. So that's a little bit unfortunate. However, that doesn't mean that Akai eMusic Air can't do something about it. It doesn't mean that they can't do some work on the coding, and it doesn't mean that this is the final version. You know, companies update plugins all the time, so it's not over. It's not the end of the world. But as things stand right now, and I'm not the first person to point this out, I already know somebody else that's pointing it out. We had a quick chat about it yesterday, and I said to him I was going to be making a video about it today. And I didn't have a chance to test it last night. He did have a chance to test it last night, and he came to the same conclusion that I did. It's not accurate. So that's unfortunate, but it sounds good. I'm happy with how it sounds. So now moving on to Reverb Pro. Air Reverb Pro. Now this is pretty decent actually. I'm going to be honest. I quite like this. It's a good addition. It's a little, I wouldn't say it's heavy on the CPU, just actually going back to the Visual EQ, sorry, I should have said this. It looks like it takes around about 2% up of your CPU, RAM, etc. So that's not a huge amount. And in the MPC, we don't tend to be running 100 tracks with EQ on them. But just to point out, it does take up a little bit of your processing power on the MPC. Now, I don't know what it does on the new MPC 3, the MPC Live 3. I don't know how it reacts on that, how much power it takes up on that, because that's obviously more powerful and I don't have one to test. But on my MPC 1, it takes up around about 2%. So anyway, jumping into the Air Reverb Pro, it's nice. It's a nice sounding reverb. I'm not going to compare it to every other reverb because that would be an entire video in itself. And this video is already longer than I was expecting it to be. But if I'm going to be brutally honest, comparing it to other reverbs, which I did this morning, does it really offer anything that isn't already offered in the MPC reverbs? I've got to be honest, in my opinion, no, it doesn't. It doesn't really offer anything different. It sounds okay. It's got some great presets and I could flick through them all day and play you a whole load of tracks. In fact, let's go to Drum Room and we'll play this beat, Drum Booth. So I'm just dialing back the mix there a little bit because I'm using it as an insert effect rather than a send effect. If you want to know more about that, I've made a video about it. But basically, it's a decent reverb. It does what it's supposed to do. That sounds nice, but I'm just dialing back the mix there and just bringing it in a little bit. That's a decent drum booth sound, to be honest. I tend to use those as a reference. The pre-delay and decay do exactly what they're supposed to do. It's nice that it's got early reflections here. That's really good. I like that. I like the fact that you've got control over the EQ and the dynamics, etc. of the tail. That's really nice. Maybe I'll do a full review of it, but I've got it for 10 days on trial and I'm not going to be paying for it. So what I'm showing you today probably is what I'll be showing you. I might get a chance to do a full review of it. But let's just say it this way. It's a decent reverb. It doesn't seem to have any issues. It's not massively bad on the CPU. It sounds good. Like I said, there's some decent presets, but personally, do I think that it really is offering anything that isn't already in the MPC that was available to us for free? I would have to say, in my opinion, I should get a t-shirt with it written on. No, it doesn't. So now we're going to look at Air Utility. Pretty straightforward plugin. It gives you the ability to be able to switch phase, to mono the low end, to widen your signal. You can have mid-side, you can just mid-side your signal, etc. It is good, actually. It's quite useful. I made a video quite a while ago showing you how you can actually separate mid-side and EQ it, because something, for instance, that a lot of mastering engineers do to make a track sound bigger, and mixing engineers as well, is to EQ the side information differently to the mids. Basically, the reverbs and the side information give it a little bit more high end, and it just stretches the track out. It opens the track right out. And I've tested this on a few things today, and it's decent. It does exactly what it's supposed to do. You have the ability to change the width. That was already available. I like the fact that you have the mono straight away. The mid-side thing is decent. The bass mono thing is really cool. You basically have a delta here where you can hit the headphone. So what I am in effect doing there is monoing everything below that frequency. Basically what you're doing is you're monoing the signal below that signal, and low end as a rule, it's better to try and keep it in mono, because when you play on big sound systems, if you've got lots of stereo information going on your low end, you're going to have issues with phasing and you're just going to have issues. Now, it's not a rule that you have to stick by. I know plenty of really big dance tracks that have got stereo information in the low end and they work, they're fine. But generally, as a rule, we do tend to mono, anywhere sort of below maybe 100 hertz. That's just a number that I'm throwing out there. Don't stick to it as a rule. I tend to go 80 hertz, 100 hertz. There are reasons behind it. If, for instance, you're cutting your tracks to vinyl, you can actually make the needle jump out of the groove if you've got too much information below around about 40, 45 hertz. So that would be something that we used to do in mastering, is actually mono the bass, or make sure that the bass was in mono, there wasn't too much information on the sides. So for me personally, most of this stuff was already available in the MPC, but the ability to mono the bass, check what you're monoing, the ability to be able to have mid-side information. Without going into it too much, the mid-side is only available with stereo and swapped. Swapped does exactly what it says in the tin. It swaps left to right. The other options that you have here, you just have the right, the left on their own, and then you also have them boosted. The mid-side stuff, like I said, you can just switch to mono straight away. You can change the phase. These are all, it's called a utility plugin because these are the kind of utilities that you would just have on any kind of mixing desk, the ability to be able to change phase and stuff. But I would say with the DC offset and all those kind of things, it's actually a useful plugin. Again, I'm not going to go into the fact that they're expecting you to pay $200 full retail price for the use of this plugin. I really do think that perhaps they might actually at some point make these separate, so you can just buy the Air Utility or just buy the Air Reverb Pro or just buy the Visual EQ. I would think that they would do that. I would hope that they would do that. The Air Utility is the kind of plugin that I would expect to be for free. But, again, look, see, I said I wouldn't get into it, and I'm already getting into it. But overall, I would say as a utility plugin, it's decent. I haven't gone into absolute massive detail on it, but it is a decent plugin and it's useful. So there you have it. That's 3 of the plugins which are available in the MPC Pro Pack that you do actually have to pay for. As I've said multiple times in the video, it's $100. Full retail price is going to be $200, but whether or not it'll ever be that price, I don't know. Will they ever make it available individually so that you can just buy the Visual EQ or just buy the Air Reverb Pro? I don't know. But as things stand, you have to pay $100 for it. As I pointed out at the start of the video, there are other things that are available in the Pro Pack as well, but I just wanted to cover those 3 plugins because for me personally, that's what I would be paying for if I paid for the $100, because the other things in the Pro Pack are not things I would probably tend to use. So I hope I wasn't too brutal on the EQ, but I just wanted to make it clear before you pay $100 for a Visual EQ that is everything that you dreamed of and everything that you've been asking for, it isn't. It's not accurate. It's not an accurate Visual EQ. And if the point of it is Air Visual EQ, then it needs to be an accurate Visual EQ. Otherwise, basically, it's pointless, right? It's like driving a car at 50 miles per hour, but actually you're going 70 miles per hour. Oops, I'm over the speed limit. Do you know what I'm saying? It needs to be at least more accurate. At the moment, do you know what? To be totally honest with you, I'm not a coder, but I do review a lot of plugins and I do put a lot of plugins through Plugin Doctor, and I've not seen what this plugin is doing to test tones before. The visually, it just doesn't really make sense. So I don't really know exactly what's going on. I can't sit here and categorically say to you that exactly what's going on because I don't actually know. And I hope someone pipes up and maybe goes into a little bit more detail about exactly what's going on. But the only real way you could do that is if you actually understand the exact coding that's going on. You could make a guess, so could I, and there's going to be educated guesses, and I'm sure I won't be the only person that's pointing out that this isn't accurate. In fact, I know I'm not going to be the only person that points out that this is inaccurate. But I just want it to be out there, not to piss people off and not to say, oh, Akai, you're a load of rubbish, but just hopefully to say, hey guys, maybe this needs a little bit of work. Maybe you need to do a bit of work on it and update it. But also, most importantly, okay, this is just the way that I am. I don't really tend to rely on visual EQ so much. The reason is because I've been mixing since the mid-80s and we didn't have visual EQ then. So I learned by ear and I still EQ by ear now. Now, I'm not saying that using visual EQ is a bad thing because it absolutely isn't. And I know that a lot of people don't have the luxury that I've had of mixing for over 40 years. So they want to use visual EQ to EQ. And there's absolutely nothing wrong with that. And I teach students that all the time. Look at what you're EQing. Look at what those bands do. Look at what those frequencies are doing. Look at what happens when you attenuate the frequency. Look what happens when you boost the frequency. So there's nothing wrong with using visual EQ. But if it's inaccurate, then what's it doing? You know, you're not getting anywhere. You're not learning anything. You're not doing the right things. You're boosting a 1,000 hertz and you're not boosting 1,000 hertz, or you're looking at what your signal's doing. Oh, look, my drums, the snare is sticking out at 2,500 hertz. So I need to maybe attenuate that slightly. So you go to 2,500 and you attenuate that slightly. Oh, but it still doesn't really sound right. What's going on? I need to add some air at 10K. Let's put, whoa, what's going on with 10K there? There's something very, very weird going on with my hi-hats. So you see where I've gone with that? I just really wanted to point out that just be mindful of the fact that it's not accurate at the moment, but it might be in the future. Hopefully it will be. And also hopefully it will be available for less money, maybe even free. Who knows? Thanks for watching. This is The Crepes Motel. My name's Conan. Till next time.